Hello, I hope you're doing well as we come to another section on insights on Philippians. Tonight we're in the next to the last passage we're going to look at, Philippians chapter 4, 10 through 13. I'm Dr. Sid Webb, and I'm excited to be able to get into this with you and looking forward to seeing what God has for us as we take a look at it. So speaking of which, let's take a look now at Philippians chapter 4. In the insights on Philippians tonight, I'd like to touch base again on the idea of spark, which is to apply, and also the idea of setting. And we have a verse in here that's very well known for that, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But the idea of spark is to consider the principles of the passage you're looking at and to think about how you can apply them in your life. And so we want to focus on that tonight, and then we will get into the issue of setting. But let's take a look at the passage in front of us, Philippians chapter 4, 10 through 13. In this well-known passage, Paul says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So there's our passage. We take a look at it. And I want to show this little chart that I made, this little graphic that I think helps us to think about what Paul is saying here. The idea is that we have the truth, the solid truth, the Word of God. And it is, as I said, solid, and it remains, it endures, and it does not change. It is the truth. But our circumstances go up and down like a biplane, just flying all over the place. And if we are depending upon our circumstances to determine our spiritual attitude, to determine our mindset, to determine whether we're happy, and to determine whether we're going to rejoice, then our lives are going to be all over the place. And so we have to lock them into the truth and not have our lives dependent upon our circumstances. They need to be dependent upon the truth. And the flip side of that is our truth does not vary with circumstances. Our circumstances don't determine what our truth is. Our truth helps us navigate the circumstances. And so I suppose you could look at it this way. It's like being in a canoe navigating a whitewater river. Yeah, the canoe is moving, but the canoe is the canoe, and it's solid, you hope, and it's stable, and it's moving down the water. Even though the circumstances change, you're in that canoe and you're moving forward. I don't know if that's a great example or not, but it, for at least for me, communicates a bit about this because life circumstances are crazy. And we come back to what Paul said, and he is a man who was brought up in an environment where he was well educated, and he was in the group of Jews who were considered to be spiritual leaders, and he had all of these things. He had all the earthly advantages, and yet what he did not have was Christ in his life. He did not have that relationship with Christ. And so once he did, then as he is living his life, he is finding that circumstances for him as an apostle are going to sometimes be very challenging, and sometimes they're going to go well. He'll be taken care of, but then there'll be times he'll have want and hunger, and he'll be cold. We know Paul was shipwrecked at least 4 times. He was beaten many times. All sorts of things happened to Paul, and yet he was rejoicing in the fact that he could do these things for the gospel. But if Paul depended upon his circumstances to determine his happiness and also to give him his measure of personal spiritual value, he would have been in a lot of trouble. So we do see with Paul that he has learned how to survive these different situations, and he has learned that his life is based upon the truth of Jesus Christ and on Christ's love for him and what Christ did for him, and the circumstances are going to come and go. So this is Paul's message to us, is that we should focus on the truth of Christ in our circumstances, and then with our circumstances to apply the Word of God in the circumstances, to trust when things are difficult, to pin our hope upon Jesus, to look up toward him, to get our happiness from him, to get our encouragement and our hope from him. So in our circumstances, when things are going badly and they're tough, and they are tough sometimes, that we are actually applying the Word of God by focusing on Christ. And then the flip side of that is when things are going extremely well, that we're not going to get the big head and say, well, they're going well because of me. I mean, I'm great and all these things, and that's why they're going well. And we get that arrogance. One thing I learned about arrogance in life is that when you get arrogance, God's going to kick it out from underneath you. Somebody once said the strange thing about humility is once you think you've got it, you've lost it. And I think in our circumstances, when things are going really well, we just have such difficulty applying the truth in prosperity. Like somebody once said, it's the prosperity test, and we so often fail it because we get the big head. So Paul is saying, lock yourself in on the Word of God and apply. And so that's why I use spark here, because spark is the idea that the Word of God comes alive in our lives and we depend upon the truth. The next word is the word setting. And we've seen setting before, for sure. It's the biblical, historical, literary, cultural, and immediate context. So the word setting is really a synonym for the word context. And I want to talk about setting here. And this is where we get to meddling a little bit. So just stand by. But I'm going to tell you what I see so often as we take a look at this. I'm going to go to the rest of the passage here. And I'm going to circle back around on this. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound in any and every circumstance. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Paul had learned how to handle any of the circumstances. He could navigate all of them. And then we have this fascinating verse here that is so often used and frankly, even more so, I think, abused. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And it's a verse everybody loves, and we use it for a lot of different situations. And, maybe we're going to hit on your pet situation here. You may need to lift your feet off the floor a little bit here. But, often we see it in academic context, but I'm thinking athletic contests and contexts and situations where someone is like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, for me, loving baseball, I pitched when I was younger. And if I could do anything in life, kind of any worldly kind of thing, it would be I would love to have had a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and gone to the major leagues. I would have loved that. I mean, that would have been my dream. And I could have used this verse to say, well, I can do that because Christ will strengthen me. But that obviously is taking it out of context, that just because Christ strengthens me doesn't mean he's going to give me the strength to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So you might be saying, well, what does that mean then in the verse? Because, can't we trust the Word of God? Well, of course we can. But this is why I'm getting into the issue of setting. Setting means context. What people don't admit and acknowledge and recognize when they use this verse is that there is a specific context to this verse, and it's right here. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any circumstance, I have learned to be content. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. In other words, no matter what my circumstances in life, I can navigate them and I can survive and I can thrive because Christ will strengthen me and give me the ability to work through that situation and to endure it. And I just happen to know it's kind of interesting. I know how to be brought low, know how to abound. I've learned the secret of facing plenty, and I've learned the secret of facing hunger. Well, we will talk about facing hunger. Sure, yeah. I mean, that's a challenge, but we don't usually think about facing plenty as if it's a challenge, but it is, because it can steer us away from the Lord and we can get off track and get the big hit. So Philippians chapter 4, verse 13 in context refers to that ability to navigate these situations because of the provision of Christ who strengthens you and enables you to make it. So a little bit of interesting thoughts there, I think, from the Word of God as we take a look at Philippians in the sense of the spark and then also the setting. Well, take care, and we will see you next time. God bless.